Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome someone that I have recently had the pleasure to get to know very well. He is an expert in financial services with over 30 years of experience. And right now, with what we have all been through with 2020, and now us kind of thinking in the future of what we want to see happen in the hopes we have for 2021, right around the corner, I wanted to bring financial expert Richard Schaffer on this afternoon to talk about some things that have been on the minds of all of us. So, without further ado, Richard, thank you so much for chatting with me.
I appreciate the invite. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you. And as we were talking briefly before our call tonight, I think that it goes without saying the elephant in the room is that this has been quite an interesting year, to say the least. And I was remembering with a good friend that just seemed like yesterday I was at an incredible New Year's Eve party and celebrating, the anticipation of 2020, and
Right.
little did we know how it would turn out. And there's a lot of things that can be talked about there. It certainly had an impact on a lot of people in a lot of ways. And a lot of people I know personally, as we all do, both physically, financially, and otherwise. But, for the purpose of our conversation, I think the reason that's such a timely subject, Joni, is because, I hate to say this, but, tragedy has a way of making us reflect on what and who is important. And I think for many of us, I think it kind of forced us to reevaluate, to simplify, and to determine, if we're doing the things in life that are really important. And there's a lot of things that can be said about that subject on personal levels, but as it relates to the financial world, this is an important subject because the last time probably just about any of us had a pretty global related financial impact was during the Great Recession. And you start thinking back, it doesn't seem like it was 10, 11, 12 years ago, but it was. And I can't think of one single person, certainly myself included, that wasn't really significantly and adversely affected by that time period. But it got me to thinking, Joni, about there's always something to be learned from difficulties, right? Sometimes we learn a lot more from the struggles than we do the successes. And from a financial standpoint, and I'm kind of the person that's always studied this a lot over the last 3 decades. We've had a lot of ups and downs in the market and so forth. And I hate to quote my dad, but I lost him a few years ago, and I remember one of the quotes he had. He said, "The road to hell is paved in good intentions." And I would always say, "Well, I didn't mean to do that," or this, that, and the other. And I think the same thing relates to finances. So I think that if we were to go back, and I'm sure you could relate to the same thing. If we could go back, and I hate to say even know what was going to happen in 2008, 9, 10, but have we had any ability to anticipate the gravity of what was going to transpire, how would that have affected the decisions we made financially 2, 3, 4, 5 years sooner?
Right.
Right? Because we can't change the past, but we can certainly learn from things that we could or should have done differently to better prepare ourselves for those tragedies, right? They always say we can't control a lot of things in life other than how we respond and how quickly we recover. But
Mhm.
also we gain the knowledge and insight of knowing if something like that happens again, how do I better prepare myself? I live in South Florida. We have hurricanes, kind of regularly, unfortunately. And everybody has that story that they really didn't take it seriously, and then something bad happened. So we tend to over prepare, but we're never sorry that we over prepared when something bad happens. So I think if we all look back, there's three things that stood out to me in preparation, sort of, for our conversation today. Was I think every one of us would have probably managed our finances a little differently.
I
Because
know I would have.
good, right, exactly. When things are good and money's flowing, we tend to spend a little bit more loosely, right? But when things get tightened up, we look at things in a very, very different manner. So I think that if we'd looked even the 3 years prior to what occurred many years ago, I think we all would have budgeted our money a little bit better. We would have been a little bit better stewards of our money. But we'd have focused more on getting out of debt, building equity, and building reserves so that we could, in fact, be able to survive and endure those kind of difficult times. So why is that important today? Listen, it is a miracle, quite frankly, that the economy has managed to hang on to any degree. And I guess the metrics as we could look at is, of course, the equity in the stock market and real estate both are at all-time high. But those aren't really the only barometers and even the best measures of what's really going on in the average consumer's life, right? There is a lot of small businesses that are struggling. And
Yes.
we all know deep down, even though we don't really want to have this conversation, people aren't going to be able to draw unemployment forever. They're
Right.
not going to get government subsidy forever. Rates aren't going to be artificially, reduced and subsidized, if you will, forever. And at some point over the next 3 to 6, 8, 9 months, at some point in this upcoming year, these things are going to start impacting us. So I thought it'd be helpful for us to talk about a couple of those subjects, right? January 1st is literally only like 3 weeks away. I find that hard to believe.
Oh my gosh. Right.
Yeah, well, it snuck up on us, right?
Yes, it has.
And January 1st, there are two top New Year's resolutions.
Hmm. Fitness and finances every
That's
year.
right. That's right. It's lose weight, get in shape, and get out of debt and save money. Now,
Right.
here's an interesting thing though. Why are they the same two every year? Well, it's because A, they're important, obviously. But more importantly, it's because we continue to fail at these very important initiatives,
Good
right?
point.
And here's part of the psychology of it, if you will, right? Unfortunately, you know, the concept of losing weight is easy, isn't it? Or it's not easy, it's simple. Eat less, exercise more. Great. Nobody needs to join a gym. I just solved it for you. But in the real world, it's not that easy, is it? Right. And getting out of debt is the same way. Spend less, save more.
Right.
It's not that easy because life happens. Back to my dad's quote, right? Life happens along the way. And one of the things that I've learned over all these years in the business, and I got all these licenses, I had 13 licenses at one point because I was convinced if I knew more, I learned more, I could teach more, and I could help my clients more. And I'd like to believe that I did. But the problem is it only helped them while they were physically in my presence, right? And then a month or two later, they'd see a shiny new car on the road or a commercial for a trip to Disney. And just like that whole budget and that financial plan went right out the window. So I think what's helpful to relate to is look at what the banks are able to do, right? Financial institutions. They are the biggest building in any city, in any state, in any country in the world. Now, we're not trying to vilify the banks for this conversation,
Okay.
but imitation is the greatest form of flattery, right? And I
Yeah.
often think about the golden rule, and it's not the one we learned in church. It's he who has the gold makes the rules, right? Possession is 9/10. So banks physically have the money and they know what to do with it. So the whole system is gamed against us, right? It's all rigged against the consumer because they know what to do. So not only don't we know a lot of the right kind of ways to manage our money and to save and invest, but a lot of what we're told or led to believe is also not true.
Hmm.
So one of the things that we've been fortunate to do after all these years and being able to look at ways in which we could leverage technology to be able to help the average person bank like a bank, literally to be able to turn the tables on the bank and let the average person be able to bank like a bank at the push of a button. So those three areas we're going to talk about, right? How to have a proper budget. And we're not going to beat that one to death, but I think we all kind of fundamentally know that going to Starbucks every day, right, adds up over time. And we don't really think about what $4 or $5 here and there does, right? We don't understand the impact of that long term.
Right.
So one of the principles I want people to think about is we focus a lot on interest rate. Like, right, a lot of people refinancing right now, rates are obviously extremely low. Or maybe they just appear that way, right? Because all interest is not created equal. One of the major parallels here is that it's not so much about the interest rate as much as it is how the interest is calculated, how the finance charges are assessed, and how and when the payments are applied. That's how you determine the true cost associated with servicing that debt, right? And that's what we call interest volume, right? It's a very, very different concept because all interest is not created equal. You could have a 3% mortgage, a 3% line of credit, a 3% car loan, and a 3%, let's say, credit card. They all look the same, but they only appear that way because they all calculate the interest and or the finance charges and or apply the payments differently. And that's what actually determines the cost associated with having that debt or to service that particular debt. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Right.
So one of the things that we look back at is how do we become better stewards of our money? How do we budget our money better? And how do we focus on leveraging the money we already have that cash flows through our budget to get out of debt more quickly and to build equity faster? Because if we could all go back in the past, yes, we would have managed our money better. Yes, we would have budgeted better and been better stewards of our money. But we also would have preemptively gotten our debt under control.
Right.
We would build equity. If more people had more equity in their properties, not nearly as many people would have had to lose their homes to foreclosure or short sales, right? And having reserves. So it's all a matter of you can't save and invest and develop financial independence, even financial security, if we're drowning in debt service. So the
Right.
question is, how do we do what banks do? Now I'm going to give you a great idea here.
Okay.
83% of all bank accounts are non-interest bearing accounts. Now, why is that? Well, it's because the average person, let's just say they make 60,000 a year, the average family, it's 5,000 a month. And let's say their expenses are about 4,000 a month. Well, they spend an extra 100, 150, $200 a week going out to dinner, going to the movies. Well, not so much right now.
Not lately.
In a general world, that's how it works, right? So they may only end up with $200, $300, $400 left as a balance at the end of the month. So in their mind's eye, what difference does that make? Well, why would it matter if I made interest on that? But see, they're missing the point. That's not how banks make their money. They don't take your money and put it into a drawer and go, Joni's money. They deploy that money and put it to work every day. In fact, they loan out to other banks what they call an overnight lending rate, a half percentage point a day, which means at a minimum, they're making 180% a year on your money that you're getting zero on.
Oh my gosh.
Because it's not about the $300, the $200, $300, $400 you have left. It's about the entire $5,000 and leveraging every dollar every day until you spend it. They actively are putting your money to work. So there's four primary concepts we talk a lot about. It's about interest float, strategic payoff,
Okay.
interest accumulation, and interest cancellation. It's being able to dynamically leverage your money more efficiently. And so we've been fortunate to work on some different strategies and using different tools and products that help you navigate your money more efficiently. And that'll help people better prepare themselves. So when we get into 2021, it's like everybody that joins the gym, 21 days later, they're all gone, right? What happens to that budget that we set for 2021? It's right out the window within 30 days. So our whole goal is to help people better understand the relationship between what they're spending and the long-term impact of it. Small differences, 25, 50, $100 here and there makes an exponential difference down the road. And a separate call will actually dive a little deeper related to actually how mortgages specifically work. Having owned 3 mortgage companies, had 1,100 personal clients, I can tell you they don't work the way most people think they do. And they're very uniquely structured over other types of loans.
Wow. Lots of great information. So what is the takeaway? What do we want people to, what is the action steps of this information? Because there's a lot we need to know that we don't know, Richard.
Absolutely. Well, one of the programs that I was very fortunate to be a part of helping to launch a number of years ago was a product that actually works a little bit like, financial GPS,
Okay.
where literally the system can tell you, just like using GPS on your phone, right? Most of us know how to go to point A to point B. I just went to my mom's house in Sarasota for Thanksgiving last week. Now I've been there 100 times, Joni. I know where my mom lives. But every time I get in my car, I still click mom's house on GPS.
Why not,
One,
right?
because I don't want to think about it,
Right.
right? I want it to be automated. But now my mom has become like I was when I was a child. Like, are we there yet? So my mom's like, how close are you, right? And now I can tell her, I'll be there in 47 minutes. Now, the difference, though, is this. Point A and point B has not changed. What's changed is that in the real world, there's something called traffic. In the real world, there's weather, there's car accidents, there's railroad crossings, there's I got to stop and go to the restroom or get something to eat or get gas, right? And every one of those things set the clock over. So imagine something that could manage your money just like GPS does for navigation, literally telling you to the penny, to the day, exactly which debt to pay off, how much and when, and to be able to leverage every dollar you have, every day you have it until you spend it. And literally able to maximize, if you will, the manipulation legally of your money to bank like a bank and reduce your effective interest rate to roughly 1%, in some cases less. Now, if you could eliminate 2/3 of the interest you were going to pay, well, number one, you'd pay off that debt a lot faster, but you build equity more quickly, even in a potentially down or declining market. And that's going to free up more dollars more quickly for you to save and invest and so forth. So we can get into deeper details on another occasion. But I think the takeaway really is, this particular product that we've been able to develop has been absolutely extraordinary. And it literally helps taking the guesswork out of it. Just like GPS, I just listen for that voice to tell me to turn right in 200 feet. Imagine something that could do that for your money. And I know that you're obviously getting very well trained on being able how to navigate through that software. And it's one of the things that I will tell you is probably the single greatest solution that I have seen as a planner and advisor in 30 years, because now they don't have to remember what I told them. It's not a generic strategy or concept or idea. It's literally a proven system that takes all the guesswork out of it and gamifies the process to literally help the average person bank like a bank, leverage their money more efficiently, get out of debt faster, and of course, build equity in a fraction of the time.
Absolutely. Oh, that's fabulous, Richard. Okay, so I know we're going to talk more, but okay, we're gonna have to end this in a moment. But should I have should I ask people to just message me and we can, set up a time to talk with them together and tell them more about this? What would
Yeah,
you?
absolutely. I would highly invite you to do that. We
Okay.
could be of support any way you want, but I'd recommend everybody listen to call do three things really, right?
Okay.
Number one, I'm going to be honest with you. Stop procrastinating,
Okay.
right?
Because there's going to be questions.
There's always next week, next month, next year, right?
Right.
January 1st is right around the corner. If you wait until January to start thinking about your budget, you're going to lose a month. You want to start taking this time now to get your financial house in order so that you can actually hit the ground running efficiently come January 1st. So I would absolutely invite people. I think you can do a free, complimentary analysis to see whether or not they'd be eligible to utilize a solution or a strategy like this. You can do it in a pretty limited amount of time, obviously. Don't need their social security number, don't need their account numbers, just the basic snapshot of their finances. And we'll be able to do an analysis to be able to see exactly what that impact would be like. But I'll
Okay.
tell you what, as long as I've been in and around this space, we see people saving 50, 100, $150,000 in interest in 10, 15, 20 years off of debt. Those are dollars you will never pay to the bank that you can now redirect to you and your family and your future savings goals. It's an absolute game changer. Again, 13 licenses and having owned companies in all this spaces, I think, where was this 20, 30 years ago, right? Because I was sitting with people trying to educate them and all those sorts of things, but life happens, right? The average person has a family, they have a life, they have a job, they have responsibilities. They don't have the capacity or the bandwidth to be able to focus on all these things all the time. And even if they could, even if I had a good sense of direction, I'm still relying upon GPS because it's more efficient, it's dynamic, and it's real time. So
Right. We've
my
got
call
time.
to action would be that.
Yeah. All right. Sounds great. Richard,
So I
thank you so
appreciate very much the
much.
opportunity to be with you. Believe me, I'm very passionate about these subjects. My goodness, there's a lot of different subjects that we could really cover some territory on in the future. And again, mortgages in particular would be the one I'd love to talk about in the future. But just starting with this beginning point, right? Journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. It's getting an honest perspective on exactly how much your debt is costing you. Imagine if somebody could know the day and month and year they'd be totally out of debt, exactly how much interest they would save, and how much they're scheduled to pay. And at any given moment, it would dynamically adapt to their ever-changing circumstances. It is absolutely a game-changing sort of platform. And I strongly invite anybody that's obviously been kind enough to jump on the call to take advantage of that and direct message you. And if you need any additional support or information, certainly we'd be happy to provide it.
Absolutely. And then I'll connect them with you, Richard, and we'll help folks out. Because for me, the big thing is I didn't realize that it wasn't really about the percent that the interest percent that the mortgage companies or
Mhm.
financial institutions are charging for any sort of debt. It's volume, it's interest volume that is taking wealth away from folks. So
Oh, I love that subject. That's one I could talk about. You're 100% right. Interest rate is a factor, but it's only one of numerous factors. And we're not really trained to think that way. Just like buying a car, it's all about payment now, right? With
that's
loans, it's all about interest rate. But what they don't realize, they're playing some little games behind the scenes. And that's why actually your mortgage is the most expensive loan you'll ever have. Not just because it's the biggest, not just because it's the longest length of time, because inherently it's how that particular type of loan is structured intentionally. And
yeah,
that's why you pay back 50, 100, 150% of the money you actually borrowed. And it's significant. And we've got to figure out a way to help beat the banks at their own game.
right. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time tonight. We're going to have more
Thank
time with
you.
Richard, and send us a message, send me a direct message. I can put you in touch with Richard. We can help you out. There's going to be more information to come, but for starters, think about what you have as debt, and think about that there are better ways than the plan that you're following. And
That's
follow
it.
us, watch us. We've got more information to come. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Richard.
It's my pleasure. I look forward to it. Thank you so much for the invite, Joni.
Have a great night.
Good night.